I am Kavita Bahal.
And I am Kizal Jackson.
And welcome to the Live Wire. So Kizal, what's going on in the Caribbean?
We are at a crucial moment in our history where we are forced to grapple with a new normal. This is global uncertainty, Kavita. And fortunately, we have to go back to what we started with. What started us initially was agriculture, and we have to go back to the land.
When agriculture fails, all else fails. And if it is that we cannot dig the dirt and plant that soil, we have lost ourselves completely.
And we are with Mr. Diosaran Jagru, former CEO of Caridi 1975 Limited, and a man with a wealth of experience, long-standing history in farming and agriculture. We know that right now in America, they are cutting back in terms of a lot of the mega farms are closing down. Right. There is a deportation in some of the farm workers who are in fact immigrants. We are having a backlash here in Trinidad and Tobago as a result of food security. What investment can we make in agriculture to sustain it in order for us to have some level of food security?
Okay, thanks for having me.
You're most welcome.
We have been toiling with the idea of increasing our food production and aiming at food security for many, many years. Many great minds have tried to address this problem. I think with COVID-19, it has brought some urgency to that issue of food security. It's very difficult for us to, in this present economic situation that we are in, to sustain the kind of food import bill that we have. So we must seize this opportunity to find ways and means of increasing food production.
Yes, because Mr. Jagru, within the last 10 years, we have seen the food import bill is extremely high.
It is.
And then when we look at the contribution of agricultural sector, this sector have been treated by governments as a bastard child or a stepchild. Right. It has never been given since, I would say probably independence and post-independence, this priority. The priority went to oil and gas and we shift away from agriculture. But why do you think this movement and this shift away from what we can do? Why is this shift? Why are we moving away from agriculture instead of running to the land?
Well, there has always been the issue of being able to buy instead of cultivating. As long as we had the money to buy food from abroad, we always look at that as an easy way out rather than cultivating our own. So take, for example, we were at one time self-sufficient in citrus.
Yes.
All right? And not too long ago, within living memory, and all that has gone, right? Similarly, we were self-sufficient in many of the root crops. Now we are importing some of these root crops. Well, also tomatoes, cabbage, all these things are coming from abroad. Two things that we need to remember. One is, no investor will put money into something that he is not getting a reasonable return. And if it doesn't afford a reasonable return, you wouldn't attract the investment. So that's one. The second thing is, we have to compete with the outside world. And as long as somebody can bring in tomatoes cheaper than what you can produce here, that will happen.
So that's the question of the
competitive advantage. We have to address that. Now, given what we have at present, investors need the support of government in many areas. Infrastructure for one. You need to have a consistent supply of labor, water, access roads, market, and you need that sense of importance. Farmers must be treated as important people. Farmers over the years have been looked at as a lower class of people. We have to show some importance to farmers and treat them that way. Every farmer wants to make as much money as possible, and they should expect to do that.
Are you saying that there is a persistent cultural stigmatization to farmers in terms of low class? And is it that because the farmers are not receiving benefits in terms of monetary benefits to what they're doing, that this stigma continue to linger on? Because in 2013, when the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar said, look, this is the promised land, and she gave the promised land via the VSEP packages to these farmers, yet still, it took so long for it to be actualized.
Right.
But there's still not a psychological change in our populace as to how we look at farmers. Remember, we have to go back a little bit into history.
Right.
Because now farming, we look at the indentured laborer side, we look at the African slave side, and everyone seems like we want to run away. We want to run away from the stigma of the dirt, of the soil. We want to put on shirt and tie and sit in air-conditioned offices, rather than, you know, the yum from Sesame Street that ate out their planet. And this is what we are becoming, because now we are running away from our essence that create our wealth.
Yes, but farmers by themselves cannot do it. We need an entire movement. The entire population must be with the farmers. Government must play its part.
Farming
as well. Farming has been a laissez-faire operation in this country, totally independent of any government intervention, other than the subsidies. It is time that government come into the act and organize things.
With the level of instability that we are seeing in the global village now, there's a level of instability even in the food chain supply. So Kavita, what is next? We do understand that yes, we may get better deals, but at what expense?
You know, there is a saying long ago, when you forget how to dig the earth and plant the soil, you have forgotten yourself. And I think that many of us, our generation today, this modern generation, they don't know anything about agriculture, its purpose, or its importance. I think that the education is lacking in that sector, making these young minds, these children, really appreciate agriculture and what it has done for us. Now, it is as old as time. All our money is going into foreign crops.
Correct.
And you know, also it is a fact that when we are looking at agriculture and farming, if it is that we don't have that support from our government, everything will come crumbling.
Well, Kavita, you may not be, you may be too young to remember when in primary school we used to have school gardens.
We had it too, you know.
You had it.
Mr. Jagru, yes. Agriculture is actually one of my favorite aspects in secondary school, you know. And I thought it was so relaxing going there and they're picking your little cucumber, your little tomatoes, and it was actually one of my subjects I loved the most, you know. And then to our family, my ancestors and our family had land galore, and they were also in farming, you know. Our family Bahals, you know, they are known in that area. My grandmother, she was also a farmer. So I mean, you know, I think ever since I was growing up, being introduced to agriculture and so on, it was something that was soothing and relaxing. But if I have to tell my kids now, you know, go plant with mama in the garden, they're washing, mommy know our hands, and you know, but when your hands get that dirt on it, you feel a sense of accomplishment. You know? Well,
again, I come back to the earlier point. Once it is profitable, once there is a comfortable living to be made, people will gravitate to it. And it has to have that. Everybody wants to be able to buy a car, have a nice holiday with their family, and you know, enjoy the things that everybody else. Once farming could do that, it will attract.
Do you think that bringing back sugarcane, that there's a future for sugarcane coming back into our country? Because I mean, our economy is falling. It's at a state where it's falling because we depend on what you call foreign crops. But if it is that we grow our own crop here, we can sustain our falling economy, an economy that is slowly dying. What are your views on bringing back sugarcane?
Yes, I think there is some merit in bringing back sugarcane. We have farmers who have approximately 16,000 acres of land that they previously cultivated in cane. And I've spoken to some of them recently, and they're hoping that something will happen. There are, for example, the sugar, producing the sugar. We need not go into the actual refined sugar. We can go to the sugar, the syrup, right, as a means of a sweetener.
But do you think that there are so many substitutes now that's competing with the king that has fallen?
Yes,
the king sugar?
yes.
I don't know if it will be viable for us too, but I think we need to also differentiate between our cash crop and our subsistent crop.
Yeah.
Because it both can be beneficial, both at a subsistent level and at a market level.
Yeah.
Because we need food.
We
food
need
is
food,
the essence of our survival. We cannot survive without it. So if we put that mandatory effort into promoting agriculture, promoting farming, even our children, let us look at soil chemistry. Let us gear them towards this, because when you ask a child, what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be a doctor. Oh, I want to be a lawyer. Oh, I want to be a politician or a policeman. Very few, if ever, I heard a child say, I want to be a farmer.
Very well. Let's just look at the sugarcane for a moment. We have the expertise; it's still there. We have the land. We have the market. We still import in sugar. And there are several other byproducts that we can get out of it. Molasses, the bagasse, which is an important commodity for the farmers to supply for the tilling of the soil and propagating better plants. So we can look at things where we have an advantage and we can build on that. Our rice industry. We used to have a very good rice industry when Caroni was around, but it's all in the hands of private farmers now. Is there the necessary investment to bring it up to the level? Are the farmers prepared to do that, or should we get government to help in that?
And that's another thing too, like what I was going to actually say. You know, we are looking at, yes, sure, we must prioritize our crops, being local, but our governments need to assist in giving more land for agriculture to take place. And the question is that an option, or are you all given that opportunity right now?
Well, the issue of land for agriculture, I think there is sufficient land. There is sufficient land. Land is not the issue. It may be that the lands are in the wrong hands. For example, there are approximately 50,000 acres of state lands that are tenanted.
Yes.
Waterfield, Carson Field, and the 7,000 Caroni workers who have received lands. There are huge acreage of lands that are in the hands of tenants. I believe most of it is uncultivated, undercultivated. So the issue of land is not a problem. It's
but rather the land use.
The land use.
Because we are also seeing that persons with the land, they are moving away from, farmers are moving away from farming now.
Yeah.
Farmers, some of these farmers are selling their land and opting for another viable profession rather than farming. Now, I think what Kavita is asking is not rather the land, but the land use. How do we get the farmers to go back to the land? And not only the farmers, but how do we get other persons? How do we change a social construct that have been built for us over many years? We are trying to change something that is ingrained in us, that is ingrained in our history.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Again, I come back to the same answer. We have to make it worthwhile. And we can only make it worthwhile if there is serious government intervention. People are not going to invest their money in agriculture if they're not going to get a good return. And to give them the confidence that they will get a good return, government have to bring in the infrastructure. All the support systems have to be there. And we have it. We have a fantastic Department of Agriculture in the university that could bring upon all the expertise that we need.
Mr. Jagger, seeing that these students are home now, our children are home, and they're in the confinement of the home because we can't go outside due to COVID. Do you think that the Minister of Education should probably have an after-school activity, since teachers are working 24/7 now, that maybe parents should have a home garden And the children should go out there and toil the soil, feel what it is to feel the earth, and to do something. Isn't that a form of education as well?
It is. And I'll tell you something, Kavita. I've been talking to a few nursery owners who are supplying nursery plants to, and they have told me that they have never seen such demand. Housewives, and they say it like this, more housewives than husbands are coming to buy nurseries to plant in their back garden.
Probably because people are looking at the whole global climate, because Malthusian theory, if we go back to Malthus' theory based on what is happening in this global pandemic, Malthus said based on his equation that there will be food shortage. So now, my question now begs, would the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Mr. Clarence Rambarati, would he put infrastructure in this budget to try, too long have we been politicizing and talking about strategies and not actually implementing something substantial for agriculture, something substantial for farmers, something motivating to make farmers want to farm again, and make other persons who are probably not in the farming sector or not in the agricultural sector as a lure to want to go in this sector. Because we have been planning for years, it's donkey years of planning. They have been planning since what my grandmother used to say, donkey might turn horse before they stop with this planning. So it's time for us to implement strategies that can work. And now so more than ever.
I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the government to come on board in a serious way. I think COVID-19 has given us a serious warning of what can happen in terms of global trade and supply of goods and services. And this is the opportunity.
Do you remember this was also an opportunity in the past? Because if we go back to history, let's go back to 1975 with National Gas Company when they opened in 1975. Let's go back to 1918 with the Point Jesus Industrial Estate. That was also a breaking period for the world. Because a little while after post-independence, there was what we call the oil recession. Right. The world went into recession, oil prices dropped. Trinidad was able to come out, and much of our prosperity was because of the monetization of gas. Right. Now, within this climate, this is another climate in which we are in a disaster. We are in a crisis. This is a global crisis. Now it is time for us to probably make drastic changes and stop drag footing and stop waiting for the outside world, this hegemonic control to say, look, hand Trinidad this, and this is ours and it is better. It's time for us as a people, I'm talking to the Africans and the Indians because we are predominantly the masses of Trinidad and Tobago, for us to understand that farming is our foundation. Farming is what made us. So if we can go back and reinvest into what made us rich initially, then maybe we have a chance. But I think it is in the psychological mindset of a people, and by and large, the government is also a representation of the people.
I think many people really forgot. They forgot themselves because they were so caught up now in the industrial world that they forgot our foundation. So I think, really going back into agriculture and respecting farmers more than ever, I believe that they will definitely have some sort of unity along that way.
Well, there is some hope. And there is some movement. It's not all gloom and doom. And I can tell you, because I'm now a cocoa farmer, and I'm seeing a greater interest being shown in the cocoa industry. More and more acreages coming on back into cultivation. The added value to the cocoa. Long time we export all the beans. Right? Now we are seeing a greater interest in turning the beans into chocolate. So there is hope. There is hope. As long as there is something at the end of the day where the farmer will feel comfortable that he will get a good return.
Mr. Jagru, I'm happy that you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we thank you for being on the Live Wire.
Thank you.
And we are with Mr. Rujinath Indar Singh, well-known stalwart of the United National Congress. But today he's on the Live Wire for his expertise, 19 years experience in Caroni 1975 and from a unionist perspective with sugar. Mr. Indar Singh, tell us, we are seeing a movement away from agriculture, we are seeing a movement away from farming, we are seeing that government after government comes, government goes, and there's a neglect. Why is there such a neglect for this particular sector?
Well, firstly, let me say thank you for having me on the live wire. I want to congratulate you all for the work that you have been doing. Agriculture is a very important component of our society historically. Where we are today, the reality is that $6 billion for the last couple of years has been spent on imports of whatever you would want to append from an agricultural point of view. So my involvement, and the reason you have me here, is that for 19 years of my life, I was involved in the Old Trinidad Sugar and General Workers' Trade Union and interface with the management of Caroni 1975 Limited, whilst promoting the interests of workers. We must never forget that Caroni Limited was not sugar alone. It was rum, it was rice, it was citrus, it was dairy, it was aquaculture, and so on. And I think that we have to put agriculture, and when I say we, the opposition has its role to play, and to put pressure on the government, and not only the opposition, but the agricultural stakeholders too, needs to demand their pound of flesh as it relates to developing the agricultural sector, reducing the food import bill, preserving a very important foreign exchange, and also creating jobs in a sector that needs to give the impetus to the growth of the economy and this buzzword that we continuously speak about in relation to the diversification of the economy. So I will say that from an educational point of view, we have to ensure, and a policy position has to be taken as it relates to ensuring that at the level of the primary schools, we put agricultural and development, the gardening program, the school gardening program that we had in the years gone by, we introduced it into the curriculum.
In terms of what you call processed agriculture, in terms of, chocolates and all these different things. And the question is that if more land is allocated for the production of our cash crops, do you think that shift system can be reversed?
Well, again, I would want to put forward the position that the government made a fundamental error when it closed Caroni Limited. If it wanted to look at Caroni from an accounting point of view or from a financial point of view, and wanted to get rid of some parts of the company that was not making a profit, if I should use that particular phrase, but it should have kept, for example, the Mongello farm, the La Gloria section, the Mora Valley section, which was in the Buffalo Lipso area. Mongello was dairy, Orange Grove was aquaculture, and even the rum division should have been used to further develop the sugarcane industry from the point of view of probably private sector or farmers alone, and producing or growing the canes that would have facilitated the development of the rum industry, but also to work too with different farming interests. For example, the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago, you had different farmers groups in different parts of Trinidad. And if I could go back into the actual operations of Caroni, there was a cane farming component of Caroni where over 10,000 cane farmers, this was separate and apart from the daily paid and the junior staff and senior staff of the company, where 10,000 cane farmers was cultivating over, I think, about 20,000 acres of land. So from where I sit, I would argue the point that there's a sufficient amount of land that is available. It is the political will that has to be executed. And that is why, too, when Caroni was closed and looking at options for the continued well-being of the former workers at that time, I was able, through the union, to negotiate an agreement in the industrial court where former employees of the company got 2 acres of land to involve themselves in agricultural production. Unfortunately, when the UNC was in power, we were able to distribute about 7,000 2-acre plots. And when the PNM came into office, that was placed on the back burner of the government of Dr. Rowley.
There's my question here, Kavita, because let's go back with numbers and statistics. In 2012, our national GDP, in terms of the agricultural sector, what it contributed was 0.36. In 2013 was 0.36. In 2014 was 0.35. So we have seen that, and in 2018, 0.47. 2019, 0.5. However, we have seen a constant neglect, Mr. Ndarasingh. Government came, government went. What can we do now? We understand what happened in the past. Now, what can we do now I like what you said about the primary school initiative, implementing it in the school curriculum. What else can we do? Because we are faced with a climate that we have never been faced with. This is a different storm that hit the world that we were not prepared for. However, out of this disaster, can some good come? Can there be change and a prioritizing of agriculture, a shift back to the land? Because we may be facing limited resources in terms of food supply, Kavita. We may be facing just now food shortage. We are seeing that there's a lot of instability in global village.
Governments have been saying that over for the next 6 months, we have enough.
But I'm saying to the citizenry of the population
but
now.
then what happens after that?
I'm looking at a wider perspective. I'm taking holistically. Let's involve the private sector. Let's involve the government. Let's all get involved now, because this is our life we are talking about. Food is the foundation of life. Without food, we cannot survive. Now we are going into a situation, Mr. Ndarasingh, I mean, it sounds very gloomy that there's a possibility where we would be faced with food shortage very soon. If this continues as it is now, there would be a problem to acquire some of the basic goods.
Well, you are quite right about the food supply chain could be impacted upon as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and so on. And you see, there's an issue of trust as it relates to this whole scenario, which continues to unfold in the context of Trinidad and Tobago. What I am recollecting here is that plans that the United National Congress, through the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar, had as it relates to our National Economic Transformation Plan that we had put forward to the electorate of the country if we were voted in to be the government.
Ndarasingh, before you go further, can I address your first issue? Do you think personally, while you were in government, do you think you did enough for the agricultural sector?
Well, government, like all things being equal, is a work in progress.
The energy sector has always overshadowed the agricultural sector. What do you think, or what are some improvements can we make to make sure that our agricultural sector now overshadows the energy sector?
Well, again, it has to come from the policy makers, and of course the policy decision makers are the government of the day. And the political will has to create that shift, and of course the wider civil society too have to become more outspoken, have to become more involved in pushing and ensuring that the paradigm shift that you all are speaking about becomes part and parcel of Trinidad and Tobago and becomes
a new reality.
Well, a new reality, and really is ingrained into this buzzword or this buzz phrase as it relates to the diversification of the economy of this country.